And before I turn it over to Ms. Rapkowski, I'd like to introduce to you Matthew Price, I call him Matt. That's all I've ever known him by, as our newest board member. So we've got a Matthew, a Matt. We got rid of one of the Randalls, so we're doing okay. We'll be confused on Matthew and Matt for a while.
Yep.
I'll now turn it over to Evelyn to go into the work session.
As we get started, good evening, gentlemen. As we get started with the work session, I just wanted to remind you of an email that I sent you earlier today in regard to Dr. Rouse's absence. And hopefully I'll be able to say something a little more about that later. But before we start our agenda, we always allow Deneen West to go first. She is coming tonight with what should be and what we've been advised as our last change orders for Westridge High School. So I'm going to turn it over to Deneen right now.
Yeah, a long 6 years. So.
Yes. So this is change order number 12, and I assume that you guys have a copy of this change order. This picks up all the loose ends basically since last summer. And the main items were items that, as we went through the punch list
Sarah,
and substantial completion.
can you get copies of this?
You want me to wait a second?
Hold on to it.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm not sure if Christy had these things, and I'm not sure where she's gone.
Well, I'll tell you a fun fact while we're waiting. I just did a little bit of math. If you guys remember, this portion of the contract, we had two contracts, one for building construction and one for the athletic fields. The building construction was $54,473,500. The total change orders for this project is $264,011. That is 0.04%. So that's pretty good.
You please get number one more time. 260.
$264,011.
That's change order just on the upside, right? Because we did a lot of downs, or is that both?
It's both.
Really?
Yeah.
That's impressive. Good.
Yeah, and also another great fact is that with a project this big and many people that work on this project, and as much as we've gone through a pandemic, we had 0 incidents of hurt or just first day. And so that's really impressive. And that's all the fun facts I have.
Those are good fun facts.
Yeah.
What is the average, Deneen? Is there an average for change order?
Not really. I mean, it's just, I can tell you that's really, really good.
10 or 15%, not unheard of.
No. We did have 3 contracts on here, and that, of course, is just for the building. So for building this size.
I think as we work through those situations and change orders, I have to applaud the efforts of Deneen and J.A. Street, because they were continually making value engineering suggestions to us, the VE part. And even though there were times that we were doing the VE, I don't think we lost the quality of what we were doing here. And in fact, sometimes I think it made for a better choice along the way. So I have to credit Deneen and those that worked for J.A. Street in helping us get through those changes.
That's the one thing that I always thought it'd be very difficult to do, and truly, I mean, I have to do. I mean, she knows I've been one of the most critical of different things, but it's like, it is amazing that a group would come along and say, change orders on the downside, when in fact that hurts your bottom line. So that's, I mean, it is nice. I really appreciate what you're doing with that.
Yeah, nobody wants change orders. Believe me,
with us having some challenges, so, some geological challenges, so. I apologize that, I'm not sure if Christie went somewhere or forgot, or if they're lying somewhere and I just didn't pick them up, so it's probably my fault though.
The only thing that she had replied to me is that she left agendas on that table and she'd be right back, but.
Is it something that we have like online? I can sit down and drive math and show him what we've got if he hasn't got all this stuff.
I'm not sure, did she put them in the,
Because the change orders are they're in the mail.
are they in there?
Yeah, and I'll.
Okay, well, we can go ahead.
Have you got it? You don't have it? I'll come down.
Is everybody okay with Deneen moving forward?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so, again, this is change order number 1 for the main building construction contract. And the majority of the change orders items were fire marshal comments. And what that means is that as we would go through punching the building, I don't know if you guys remember or not, but we had 10 different buildings to punch out. And by that, I mean, this building here is one building called Building A. And so as we would complete them, we would punch them out. And there were things that the fire marshal wanted to see, like lighting up in their catwalk and different things concerning exiting and exit lights and just, miscellaneous things. This also picks up a few changes that were asked of us to do, and the by the school system for a couple of credits that we picked up. We, for instance, had a few items that we could get a couple of credits on. We didn't put in a little bit of flooring, but some of these things, remember, we said we were in the pandemic. And so a good example of that is that we got down to the end and we could not get the vinyl composition tile. And so there were some rooms like storage rooms and things like that where we were like, well, we don't really need tile in there, just stay concrete. So those were on top of all the other challenges, those were the challenges that we had to here at the very end where we couldn't get everything. Those were fairly minor. So, all of these things, I hope that you also have the backup information from J.A. Street, and you can link through those. Does everybody have that as well, which explains all of the different items? I don't know if there's any specific ones that you would want me to talk about, but if anyone has any questions,
I actually have two items I'd just like to know a little bit more about. And it may be here and I haven't seen it, so I apologize if it is. The handicap ramp, it's number 29.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we just changed it, or we didn't need it, or?
That is rails for the handicap ramp. What the fire marshal wants us to do is we have ramps in the center section of the building as you come out the learning commons.
Yeah.
And we didn't put rails up, because at the time we didn't feel like we needed them.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but this was a deduct, number 29 deduction.
Let's see.
Is that the one over the
At the
bleachers?
bleachers?
Yes.
At the bleachers.
Yeah, we took that ramp off because we have other means of exiting and we didn't necessarily need that ramp.
Okay. So there is still another,
Yeah.
okay,
And we've still got our drills worked.
okay.
Yes, they're still here on site.
Yes, indeed.
That's good. And I guess the other one, the one I have the real concern is the number 35, to remove the seismic inspection requirements. I mean, with all the activity we've had, would that not be a good thing to have? It's kind of, that's one thing I actually like to keep in there, I just don't see, I'm kind of curious about that.
Why would you want to keep that?
Well, just for the pure fact, we've had a lot of activity, we've
And
had
this
a lot
is
of,
just inspection. This is just to have a special inspection.
okay.
That's all this is.
So
That's
there's no-
something that we could do.
It's no
moving forward.
monitoring or something, it's just an inspection itself? Okay, that's fine then, okay. I guess maybe I'd made it up in my mind, but I thought at some point early in the thing, we were talking about having a monitor or something at one point, and again, I could have made that up in
Are
my
you
mind.
thinking about the monitors that we have for the settlement?
Yes.
That's what it
That
was.
has nothing to do with this.
Okay, so that's not changing anything with it. Okay, that's it then, thank you.
All right, does anyone else have any other questions? So we will be obviously closing out this contract and then the athletic fields contract as well. We do still have a little work left on the athletic fields contract. As you know, we weren't able to put the track down towards the end of the fall, or the end of, good season to go to work. So that work is supposed to commence here in the spring, and I do not have an exact date for that yet, but we will get that in.
Denise, do you mind going over what the time frame requirement is for putting that down, that surface?
Yes, so again, I'm hoping in March that we'll be able to start again, but I think what they do is of course, it's very weather dependent, so they typically just do like a 10-day look ahead, because that's about as far as you can look ahead, without knowing if we're going to get a major storm event. But they will come back and they will put in the next layer, which is the base layer on top of the asphalt that you see that's already out there now. And the whole process is a layer system, so you have that layer down and then the topping and then the striping. And I believe that was about a 30-day process to come back and do. So we'll work with, school staff, but I think it's time, and I'll check on that and just see, just go through it all, we'll see part of the day. And then that's just, like I said, it's strictly going to be weather dependent on how they can finish that. They can do the next layer and wait if they have to, 2 days, so we just didn't want them to go to that level and wait for the whole thing.
So we're not gonna have it ready for down in the field.
That's a decision that we're just like decision to make, but it just didn't get done in the fall. And I don't believe that they're ready to get done this season.
What was that question? I could hear you.
We're not having track for the track and field season.
Oh, that's nice, I didn't know that.
Will they be going to Central?
They will be utilizing central and south of Sullivan Heights track, but hopefully they'll be able to utilize this track near mid to late season.
What months does that run, track and field?
They'll start, actually start having track meets in March.
Probably April, May, where you're saying track will probably be done.
Yeah, there's just no
Yes.
way to.
When we fell off their schedule in the fall, it was understood and promised that we would be first on the schedule as soon as, they have to be guaranteed X amount of days of 50-degree weather and above to do the work. And that is the concern, and I'm sorry if I'm not making eye contact with you all. That's the concern, moving forward.
It's probably a sort of a mixed blessing though, because if we had done it prior to that dropout, it would have cost us a fortune, I'd imagine. I mean, it would have been a lot more.
It would have
I'd
been
imagine.
worse.
Much more.
And we made the playoffs, which
True,
was a plus.
and have home games, which is cool.
Right.
Are there any other questions for Deneen?
We're gonna do that change order 3 also tonight, right? Or is that something she's gonna talk about next? Okay.
wasn't sure we were doing that too. Okay, so we talked about the main building contract, and then the next one that you're gonna see is the athletic fields contract. So again, if you remember, we broke that out, that was $4,808,000. So these items are in relation to the dropout to track and field, which is what we just talked about. And then if you look at the backup information, you'll see copies of the engineering reports and so forth for that. And we also had an item which was, if you remember, there was a rock garden that we called it, that was between the softball field and the soccer. And actually, it's kind of more of the soccer than the practice. But anyway, we decided that at one point, we weren't sure that we had funds to be able to remove it, but then we decided in the summertime that we could do that, which has been great. I'm really glad that we were able to get it out. And then we did also some modifications at the entrance road. We made that a little wider. And then, of course, making it a little wider, we could rock, so that is the cost to be able to take that rock out. And then we had a few fencing modifications at the track and the baseball fields. So that change order is a total of $160,250. And as we talked about, this portion of the contract will be a little bit longer, just to be interested in the track and field. Are there any questions on that portion of the work?
I guess I should ask you the first time, is there an estimated date now? I know that at some point, the building becomes ours. What is that timeline? Is it, I know it's obviously getting closer and closer, but.
Well, as far as you're talking about for warranty,
Yes.
okay, so you have a 1-year warranty for substantial completion, and so you occupy the building a week before school starts.
Okay.
So that would be one, that's when it's 1 year. Now, there are, a few items that won't complete, so, the track that we're talking about.
But the building itself, yeah.
Any other questions on the two change orders? The next piece, and I want to do this before Deneen leaves, I've got the 3 bid tabulation sheets here for them. Deneen, do you want a copy?
I actually have 2 of them, I think, right here.
Okay.
Or even how about?
Yes. As we are going through getting bids and getting our bids for projects in the ESSER and the ELC grant dollars, we are experiencing much of what a lot of people are experiencing right now. The cost is increasing, sometimes double and even more. So as we're going through, we're having to quickly make some adjustments, updates, and weigh some of the things that we put into these grant dollars as to what can stay and what can go, because when this pricing comes in, it's exceeding what we estimated, to be perfectly honest. So the first sheet you have is on the greenhouses. This is the bid tabulation for those. Initially, and Ms. Buckles, I'm going to rely on you. What did we have in there for the greenhouses?
I feel like initially we were right about 165 for both.
And as you can see, it came in, the low bid at $222,447. But even of greater concern is the number of days that, they're forecasting for completion of these projects. We need both greenhouses, so we definitely are leaving those in, but when I bring it up because I want you to know we're moving things around so that we can make these projects happen.
Yeah, we're at 431 for both of them together, right?
Well, now you're gonna take 20,000 off each of those, so you're
So-
taking 40 off total.
So 431 minus the 40. So we're down 390 for both of them.
And we had in our budget, based on estimates,
Yeah,
165.
Yeah,
I thought that's what it was the other day we talked to us.
The second sheet you'll have is the Sullivan East Middle School canopy. What we had wanted to do there as part of the ELC grant was actually extend the canopy on the cafeteria and library side of the building so that it went for the entire length of the building. This was put in the ELC grant, which ends June 30th of this year. And we've got to have those funds committed before that and spent. As you can see, we had budgeted, I believe, 45 for the canopy. I think it was about 45, somewhere in there. You can see the wide range of bids that's come in on that canopy. You can also see that even the one at $79,370 doesn't have any electrical, so if we wanted to do any lighting, it would be in addition to. But where we
Now,
really,
there is electrical in it. What that meant was, they have to write down their subs, and that, he did not write down his electrical sub.
okay,
If it's
so,
less than 25,000, you don't
I
have
stand to be
write it.
corrected
That's
there.
a technicality for Tennessee State
It's a
Division.
big difference, I think,
the hardest thing on this one was the number of days, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Deneen, the material.
Yes, so, whenever we first started looking at getting the canopies and talking to the canopy, manufacturers, they were telling us that it would be like 6 to 8 weeks, and then when we got the bid in, they were telling us it'd be like 12 to maybe 15 weeks. So everything concerning metal was just nuts right now trying to get it in. So they did offer a deduct, but, it was a different material, different type of metal, and it doesn't match exactly, so we didn't think that was a good solution.
So at this point, we're kind of holding, and really, we don't see us being able to do the middle school canopy because of the time frame and the pricing.
You say, you don't see it, what you said?
I don't think we'll be able to get this one. It may be something that we look at in the ESSER $3 moving forward. Because this is the ELC grant, we only are able to allocate $250,000 of that grant toward capital projects.
275.
275?
I told you it was 275. We fixed it in our application.
Okay, so maybe I'll get it right here in a
We were
minute.
still short. We were still short 14,000 on the,
Okay.
on the,
Well, as you can see on the third page, the other project we had in the ELC Capital Projects Grant was the paving to complete the paving here at West Ridge, which is still rock and gravel. It came in, and you can see those prices there with the best pricing from Pavewell, who is actually the company that did the paving at East Middle. And it's significant, but the number of days, and so we are looking to shift some of that money from the canopy piece in this so that we can definitely get the paving done here, since we don't have any, and then look at the paving, look at the canopy later on in ESSER 3. But, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can they do the paving in 7 days, is that what it says? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yes, I think that actually the other two got a little confused, and they put down the time of the whole contract.
Right.
And the last two put down the actual time it would take to physically pave the parking lot,
Okay.
is why there's a difference.
So Pavewell can actually pave it in 7 days, is what they're.
As long as the weather is.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So the others will probably be pretty the same, really, in terms of the paving, actual paving part.
I think so, yeah.
Just put the timeline in.
Maybe
I guess the school will have to be out. They don't pay that long. School's in, will they?
Well, if we can get this rolling pretty quickly here and we're blessed with good weather for spring break, they would do it then.
That's it.
Oh, wow, that
makes sense.
Otherwise, we'll have to move cars around and
Yeah.
try to figure out how to make it work. And we told them in the pre-bid that we'll have to work with the school staff and just figure out when's a good time to do it. But, correct me if I'm wrong, this one is also tied to the funding where it has to be complete by June. So.
June 30th.
Yeah,
has to be spent by then, right? Not
Yes.
just committed,
Right.
has to be spent,
Um,
has to be spent.
right.
They're not just committed.
We're getting the other piece that could happen, and there's no definite, but we're also hearing that this ELC grant could happen again. This has been one of the easiest and better grants that we've worked through, and I'm very hopeful that it will. And if you'll recall, this is the grant where we committed to testing, COVID testing, and the two sites that we committed to was Westridge and Sullivan East Middle. And it has worked out well, those two locations. They are doing an enormous amount of testing. We only test our students and our staff. So if this grant does come available again this summer, we will definitely make application for it. The grant initially was $150 per student in your school district, and it could increase from there depending on the number of school districts who made application, and not a lot of school districts made applications, so our figure actually increased from the 150 base amount, which was a benefit for us.
So I guess I want to make sure I'm clear on something, because like the ELC grant and then the ESSER grant, this is multiple grants that we're looking at, not just one or two things. Is it two or is it three?
It's two.
So
We're
just the
looking
ELC and the ESSER?
at ESSER 2 and then the ELC grant.
Okay. And with those, we'll have enough, or we might have to add more money into the?
No, right now, we're okay.
Okay, sounds good.
We still have work that we're waiting on, and we've got HVAC, we've got several big ticket items to come in that we're still waiting on, but we need the greenhouses at both locations, and we need the paving. So we're trying to make those happen, but the other part of this, and Deneen will have additional information here, is we're not getting the length of time on bids that maybe we normally have in the past, as far as them holding those prices.
Right. Yeah.
Because that is changing so quickly, so they're really pushing for a decision. Generally, when we get these in, they're wanting to know, are you gonna do this or are you not gonna do this? So,
This does not require board action, does it? Because we approved the grants.
you've already approved the grants.
So we're ready to go with,
Okay.
Yes, we're just moving, we've moved the canopy out of this one for right now, and hopefully, we can look at that in ESSER 3 possibly. The thing about the canopy is there's already a canopy there, it just doesn't go all the way, the length of the sidewalk.
Are there greenhouses now at Central Middle and Sullivan Heights Middle?
There's a greenhouse at Sullivan Heights Middle that is practically new
Okay.
and very good, and we've encouraged the new STEM teacher there to utilize that. We do not have a greenhouse at all at Central. We have a small greenhouse at East Middle.
Because at one point, when we were closing South, we were going to move that one, so that never happened. Okay.
It did not, because of the cost associated with moving it and the potential to damage it.
Okay. Sounds good.
And
I
at
really
that
hadn't
point,
paid attention.
we were looking at pricing, that to buy a new one was as economical as trying to move that one.
Good.
Are there any other questions about change order 12 or 3, or what I just gave you on the bids that we've just gotten in? Bids are coming in pretty slow, but we do have these 3 I can report to you on. Janine is also really good to be at the bid openings and to help us as we go through these as well. Any questions for Janine?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Janine. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the agenda. The agenda, maybe through there this evening, when we get to the director's comments, we have quite a bit of recognition this evening from starting with J.A. Street. We have a Heart Saver recognition, and I'll save that until we talk in there. West Ridge football, we have a couple of All-State selections here in football. We have a special recognition in cross-country. We have 2 students here who have been selected in the top 20 under 20. We're also presenting the Sullivan County Retired Teacher Association mini grant winners tonight. We have 3. And Holston Elementary will be recognizing that school staff for being selected as a model of demonstration school in the gold level. So moving into, I think she's left you off, or has she? She didn't put down board chair comments, I don't think, unless she's got you at the end. Never mind. Okay, number 6, then I'll turn to Mr. Jones.
Bluntville campus update. I talked with Mayor Venable last week. He wanted to do a tour of the Bluntville campus. We've asked Mr. Hubbard to do some cleanup work on the rooms before we open it up for any type of tours. And I think we asked Charlie to try to be ready within 2 weeks, which I think it was last Monday or Tuesday that we went through the building. And the building, they've done a good job of doing things, but there's still quite a bit of stuff that needs to be either moved out or consolidated in one area. And Charlie and his guys are going to do that. And then I'll let Mayor Venable know when they can take the county commission through it. And as I told him, we want it to be ready for other people to tour it also if the county is not interested in it. But he has indicated that the county does have a strong interest in the building and is hoping to have a tour before February the 17th. That's their next regular scheduled county commission meeting. So he'd like to have a tour before that, and if we can at all possibly do it, we will. And that will give them a chance then to make their offer at an official meeting. It's very complicated and difficult to talk about prices in a meeting in public when we don't know what somebody wants to offer and they don't know what we want for it. So all that's still kind of up in the air, but he did say to express that they are interested in the building, and if they give him the authority to authorize a certain amount, then we will follow through with that. And possibly, if we needed to have a call meeting to decide whether to accept their offer or not, should they make an offer. But at this point, I think that we can expect that there will be an offer. Don't know yet what it might be. But we'll try to get the tour scheduled with County Commission before the 17th so that they can have that information that they might need. And theirs is complicated by trying to maneuver some of their, not ESSER money, but whatever the title is there. They're trying to use some of that to do some other things that would make them able to use the Bluntville campus. And I don't know the details of that. Any questions on the Bluntville campus? Any questions on the Bluntville campus? Okay, I put the Colonial Heights update on there. I asked Ms. Ralphowski to send you a copy of the letter from Robert Brown, and I assume that each of you got that. two things on that letter. They raised the price that they were willing to pay by $400,000, I believe, and that brought it up to $1.8 million. It's complicated a little bit because the property is not for sale at this point, because all we've done is declare it surplus, and we have not advertised a bid for that, and we cannot negotiate with anyone other than a county government. We could negotiate with Kingsport, or we could negotiate with the county commission and sell a piece of property, but we cannot negotiate with a private individual, whether it be church-related or something else. So I put it on the agenda just simply because he had a deadline in there, I think, of March the 1st, if I remember correctly, that they'd like to have an answer back on. And I don't have a motion for you. Unless somebody makes a motion, it will not be a voting item. It's simply there for your information as to what we do with the Colonial Heights campus. Right now we have not put it up for sale. All we've done is declare it surplus, and we have put a restriction on it has to be used for either, has to be used for residential, cannot be used for a school, is what we put in our motion that was passed. Any questions on the Colonial Heights?
So we actually did vote last time to put it in surplus? I thought that was still on hold. We have voted in surplus?
Evan says no, we didn't
No, I don't think
surplus
so.
it, we just placed a restriction on it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think we'd done that part. Okay.
Change the notes on that, it's not in surplus, but it is restricted for residential only at this point, and cannot be used as a school. And the reason I say residential only, the original restrictions on that property said residential and a school, or a school. But we changed the restrictions to where it cannot be used as a school, therefore it's residential only at this point. There has been some interest from some county commissioners asking about selling some of it for use as a government function. And I told them they needed to talk with the county attorney to find out whether or not that would qualify as residential or not. I'm not sure it does, but I gave that information back to them. And you have probably as much information as I have now on the status of the Colonial Heights campus. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would make a few comments. I would remind everyone, I think it's very important that we be very careful what we do with these two pieces of property. And think about the full impact of whoever we decide to sell it to. Right now, they're ours. A mistake we make could come back to haunt us, and I would urge everybody to keep that in mind. I mean, not knowing who's going to offer what or who's going to be in the market, but whoever it is, I think those two pieces of property deserve careful consideration.
And this will be a board decision of whatever direction we take. At this point, we cannot take offers on Colonial Heights, in my opinion. But if somebody sends me something, I'm going to share it with you, if it's a letter or any type of legal document. Any other questions? Anything else?
All right, that would complete item number 6, unfinished business, and moving on to item number 7, new business. It's been a little while since we did some policy work, so you're going to see that we have several policies this month to go through. I'll be asking and recommending that we adopt these policies on first reading. The first one is the policy 1.8011 on emergency closings. This policy update is a result of Public Chapter 384. Prior to when there was a time when some employees were classified as essential, some as non-essential. This public chapter comes back and says all employees are essential. As recommended by TSBA, lines 15 through 18 will be struck in this policy. We'll continue also to evaluate this policy for next month as well, but for the time being, I do want to ask that this policy be passed on first reading due to the change in the law. Are there any questions on emergency closing?
So we need to waive the rules on this, though,
Yes.
pass on first reading.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody hear that?
The second one is policy 4.700, testing programs. If you'll reference page number 2 here, this policy is basically remaining the same, but we have had to go back in on line 8 on page 2 and add that we shall use the following methodology in calculating a student's grade, and that is the cube root methodology. Dr. Palmer has become very familiar with this one. He has had to do quite a few calculations. You may say, what's your choices? I think there were 2, but Dr. Palmer has recommended this one, and in going through the process of calculations, this methodology, he felt, as the rest of us did, benefited our students the most. And that's why we lean toward the cube root methodology. And that is the only change on that one.
Ask one question on that same page. It's line 12 and 13. It says these will include the assessments such as, well, never mind, I guess that actually answers my question because it says such as. So we're not restricted to those 5. I was, okay.
No,
I was actually going to say we should make it where we don't restrict it, but that such as sort of didn't jump out to me just now.
no. If you'll see there, it says interest inventories shall be made available
Yeah.
to ninth graders, and it could include the Cooter, Myers-Briggs, ASFAB, which we've done in the past, College Board Career Finder, we do that one. What is the one that we're using the most right now?
Major clarity.
That
Major
was my
clarity.
question because it wasn't on here, but I guess it doesn't have to be without, because it says such as. That's why, because I knew it wasn't on here, what we're actually using, so.
Right, it can be one that's outside of this too.
That's perfect. I just want to make sure we're okay with what we're doing, but we are.
Does anybody have any questions or want to go through the cube root methodology? All right, thank you. Item C, which is policy 5.202, separation practices for non-certified employees. Attorney McCarty had reviewed this policy as we were going through some situations, and it is his suggestion that on line 5 that the last sentence be removed from this policy.
Is that after page?
Yes. Yes. There's a lot of different influences and things that can happen here. But that is his recommendation, and I agree with him after having some experience, that is a good idea. And it would be comply with state law as well. Policy 6.503, homeless students. We're just updating this policy as per TSBA because some things have changed. On the first page, line 8, actually what has been taken out there is the wording awaiting foster care, because that is now included in policy 6.505. On page 2, the addition on line 10, they've added the director of schools is now included in the process of enrolling students. And the rest of this remains the same. Is that correct, Ms. Aker?
It's included in procedures.
Right. So basically, adding in the director of schools on page 2, and then the removal of awaiting foster care on page 1, because it is included in a different policy, 6.505. Item E is the 21-22 bus contracts. And yes, I realize that we are in January. This is something that we started working on back last spring. And this has taken a long time. I apologize for that. One of the things that came into play with this contract was the law changed in the summer, saying that we could entertain 6-year contracts as well as the 4-year contracts. We had already put out a bid for the 4-year contracts. I wanted to, after that happened, I wanted to come back and I wanted to rebid and see how the 6-year contracts came in. We have 32 buses on this contract, which is one of our larger numbers of buses that go through the contract. If you'll remember, we have to bid a fourth of the buses every year. So as you look at this contract, keep in mind this is a contract for 6 years. This pricing is locked in for 6 rather than 4. This is $300 a day. And the only other change to the contract, and I will say Mr. Hull has reviewed this contract, is on page 9. And that is a cap on the fuel in the contract. Mr. Miller, would you add anything to that?
That's everything, you highlighted all the changes.
And I would ask Mr. Hull, do you have any reservations about where we are on this contract?
No, I mean, it's pretty standard that we've had for quite some time. It gets changed a little occasionally, but I think it has worked pretty well. The difficulties come with the bids and the negotiations, but I think the basic contract is, I don't have any reservations about it.
The other thing that I'll bring your attention to on page 9 and number 3, you can see there that we do reflect 6 years, which locking in for 6 years was something that I felt like would benefit us in the long run. And so if you have input or feel differently about that, it ended up being about $15 more on the day, moving from the 4 to the 6. Somewhere, it was right in there. Yes.
Went from 286 to.
Yes, about $14, almost 15. Do we have questions on the bus contract for these 32 routes?
Is this taking action from us, or do we have to approve the contract before it's bid out, or do we have to approve it after it's bid out? Or are you saying it's already been bid out, and this is just an example, it's getting ready to be signed if we say okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, I'll be asking you to approve this contract tonight.
Okay, gotcha.
In addition to this contract, and I will also be asking you to approve 5 bus route transfers. You can see those are noted. We have transferred 5 bus routes from CNS Transit to 2 of our other contractors. 3 went to Central Buses, 2 went to S&R Buses. Now, Mr. Hull has told me that I needed to bring that to the board. I apologize for not bringing it any sooner. I think everyone in here is aware of the struggles we've had this year with busing. Our contractors have had a hard time finding drivers. Mr. Cox of CNS ended up, these 5 were turned over to other contractors who could actually put a driver on those routes and service those routes when Mr. Cox could not. So I am going to be asking you to approve these transfers tonight. And I will tell you that I made those transfers several months ago, and I apologize. But we were in a situation where we needed bus service. We needed drivers. We need more. We still need some adjustments, but
We know how many drivers are still down, how many routes, buses are still missing.
We're missing, we need 7 drivers in the east zone, and it will go from 2 to 3 in all the other zones, so either 9 or 10. And the reason it bounces so much is we may have one go out for some type of medical, and then one will come back.
That's probably, I guess the reason I'm asking that is I know Ketchum, the buses are still not getting there till after school's out. Is it the reason they're still short buses, or do we need to look at something else to fix that?
It's just drivers, we need drivers. And it's amazing how one driver put into play can affect so many other things, because one driver there can relieve another driver that's doing maybe 2 or 2.5 routes, and then that speeds up numerous buses.
we have another situation that's happening with transportation, and that's a change in the law and how drivers become certified. I'm hoping that some of the things that we're getting ready to do will help. And I'll let Mr. Miller talk about that, with us having what I would call a testing center at Central. So you want to elaborate on that, Mr. Miller?
Jeremy Blair, who owns Central Buses, he's been working with Barry Bishop, who used to be a third-party tester for the state. He was in Johnson County, and Barry and Jeremy are going to open up the testing center. They have filled out all the documents, and they're with the state, and it's in the approval process. But what it will do, it will allow third-party testing to be conducted at Central Middle School, and that will help us because we won't have to send drivers to Boone's Creek or to Strawberry Plains to be tested. There'll be other systems, probably other types of businesses that may also have Barry do the testing for them. He was a third-party tester for probably in excess of 20 years. That will help us in so many ways.
We have also, just so you're aware, Washington County Schools has also asked to join and be able to use our center. They've been turned down on their proposal. So until they get something approved, we'll share that with them as well. Any other questions about transportation? All right, the next item on the agenda is item G, which is a calendar change. And I'm going to ask Ms. Buckles if she'd like to talk about the calendar change.
So I am going to request to be allowed to change 2 things about the approved 22-23 calendar. The first thing being, we had in-service scheduled for October 21st. It's a regional day that we are doing with surrounding systems, but that day has actually been changed to October the 28th. So to move that in-service day from the 21st to the 28th. The other change is an error on my part. May 16th is a local election day, and I try to keep students out of school on that day. And I had originally had teachers out that day, but that actually shorted them 1 day of work. And so instead of working 200 days, they would have been working 199. And so I'd like to turn that into a staff development day. Still, students will not be in the buildings.
Is that May 16th, is what you said?
Yeah. And those are the two changes that I would like permission to make in the 22-23 calendar.
Do we have in-service this year on the election in November?
No, sir, we don't. Oh, in service, yes, sorry, I was thinking kids.
Okay.
I was thinking students, no, we don't have students, yes, we do have in
That's one.
service.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
There, you said there's an election in May of 2023?
May 16th. It's a local election. Sometimes it's just the city of Kingsport,
Oh,
but it affects a couple of our schools. And that is a city election, it's not a county election. It is a city election, but
okay.
it could affect some of our schools, so.
I think Kingsville changed theirs.
And the law does require us to be closed
Yes,
on election days.
yeah. And my desire is always to have kids out, no matter if it's a local election or otherwise, just because of people in the buildings.
This is just to give our staff their 200.
Correct. It'll just be a staff development day instead of staff being out.
So we could, I guess my next question, like, what's wrong with still 199 and still pay them for 200? Is there
I
something?
think that would,
State thing, I
I
guess?
think the state would get us for that because it wouldn't meet the retirement.
I got you. I was just trying to figure out somebody to give them a little something extra.
I think that'll be an
All the
okay
troubles
day.
they're
I think
saying.
that'll be an okay day for them. They'll probably be packing things and getting ready
Right.
for the end of the year. That saves time later, that makes, in 2 weeks.
And that one day can make a big difference in retirement, believe it or not.
Uh-huh.
Any questions on the calendar change? The next item I have on the agenda is students' rights and responsibilities, grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. I've given you the cover sheet of each one of those booklets, and the whole booklet you can find online. But the first one I want you to look at is grades 6 through 8, and the page number that you'll be looking at is your page 34, which is the second sheet in there. And I want you to look at the line for transportation. I'll be requesting the same change in both of these books, that this read, parents are responsible for providing transportation to and from the alternative program unless otherwise determined by the director of schools. I'm asking for that to be added in both of these booklets. We are experiencing some very difficult situations with students getting to alternative school. And I would like to have the flexibility to assign a student to ride the bus in a specified location on the bus, unless they're going to alternative school for a bus-related situation. As it is, and as it's written, it is what I call a hard and fast rule. I do my long-term alternative school hearings. Rarely do I not do those. If it's a special education situation, I will ask Ms. Buckles to join me or to handle that. But there are times when I would like to have some discretion there. And so I will be asking for that in both booklets. It will read the same. In the 9 through 12 booklet, it's just interjecting that statement unless otherwise determined by the director of schools. That's in both of those booklets. It's in page 41 in the booklet on the high school, the 9 through 12. Prior to, yes, sir.
9 through 12, I think on that, each sheet,
What, Mr. Watson, I'm sorry.
on that, the transportation, come down, it says the each sheet is unable to be on time.
That's right, it's right on the teeth.
Sheet,
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir. Are you asking me,
I guess I just take out the T. Take out the T. 'Cause that's, you just want he, she, right?
oh, okay, I understand what you're
It says
saying.
he, she.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Billy, that's just a typo there, it says "the" instead of "he," so we'll fix that. Thank you. Okay, well, she just got up and left the room, and I wish she hadn't, because I was going to introduce you to Debbie Madden. She was the lady sitting over here to Brent's right. She came on board with us at the very end of December as our CTE facilitator. She is working diligently with our high school and middle school programs. She comes to us from Carter County, having spent 20 years there in the CTE world. She's very knowledgeable. I found her to be a very hard worker and dedicated. She is proving herself to be an asset to our staff. And I feel very fortunate to have her. That takes care of what I have, Mr. Jones, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Just 2 or 3 minor things. Next board meeting right now is scheduled for March the 3rd. That changed today?
Well, I think I'll be okay.
Okay.
I think I'll be okay.
So unless there's a change coming about later, March the 3rd, does everyone want to do work session and regular meeting together?
Works for me. It's up to you.
Nobody objects to that, so we'll do the work session at 4:30 on March the 3rd, and regular meeting then at 6:30.
Going back to central office. Where will that be, Mr. Jones?
Back at the central office.
Okay.
We'll be back there for the March meeting.
The next item, update on the access driveway from Henry Harbor into West Ridge. The engineer has plans pretty much drawn for that, but he has to apply for a permit with the state. And that is, I think the application has been, the paperwork to get it has been signed, and it's just a matter of how quickly they move before we can put it out for bids. So hopefully they'll be able to have it ready for us to do bids after he gets the permit. I think all of you got a copy of the personnel lawsuit. Either you got an email with it or hard copy of one or the other. The front page cover letter, there is a request for the possible meeting with our attorney from Nashville sometime in the near future. He doesn't give us a date, but he said he would like to meet with us sometime in the future. That's a Christmas party. If he can come for a regular work session, that'll work out. If not, we may have to do a call session if the Chancery Court asks for something that we need to do ahead of time. And that's involving both of the personnel issues that we have right now. And that's a cover letter in yours. Mr. Ralph has already mentioned Mary Rouse's mom. We need to be in prayer for her and the family. And you'll be getting a copy of the design on, probably during the meeting, of the sign for the Evelyn Ralphowski Athletics Complex. That has been designed and hopefully is, if things are going well, hopefully ready for us to proceed with. The letter will match the letters of the rest of the lettering on the outside of the other buildings. And we think the money is there for whatever donations we might need, either that or free labor, one or the other. So it's not going to affect anything in our budget, and it will comply with the board policy once everybody gets a picture of it. And Dr. Davis is supposed to send me an email he may have while we've been in the meeting here. I know I've seen a copy of the design, and we'll get you a copy of that to see if there's any questions. And you've got the Robert Brown letter, discussion on the Blockville offer. And should there be a need for a call meeting for any of these, either legal issues or selling of property, we'll get the word out to you. Anything else before we?
Just one thing, I'm not sure if everybody knows, everybody may know, but we had the first Westridge Scholarship signing day yesterday. Actually, had one of our people that's been a part of everything, Fletcher Gibson, got a 4-hour scholarship, so I just thought that'd be kind of cool. I don't know if everybody knows, we'll make sure that.
He'll probably be here tonight.
Yeah. Is he going? Okay, that's good.
We have several students here that will be here this evening for recognition.
Yeah.
So if at any time, and I should have said this before and I haven't, but if at any time when I'm doing recognition of students, and any of you want to come down, join, and be a part of that, please feel free to do so. I have certificates, and right there goes Miss Madgett with Miss Buckles, in case you need to put an eye on her, put a face with a name. But please feel free to do so. We have, as I told you all earlier, we've got a lot of recognition tonight, some really outstanding recognition tonight, and I hope you all are pleased with how that goes when we have our recognition of students. But tonight we'll also be recognizing some of our staff for some outstanding actions that they've taken this week. So
Debbie, you just got introduced when you left the room, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Debbie, if you'll turn around and face the board. I had introduced you and wanted to make sure that they put a face with the name. And I've told them that we're thrilled to have you. You're already proving yourself as an asset and a great addition to our staff, so thank you. Mr. Jones, we have Chick-fil-A this evening for the board prior to going to the board meeting, so I'll turn it back to you.
Anything else from board members before we start?
Just one input from what she just said this second. I can't speak for the board, obviously, but for myself, I would much rather take a little bit more time during that awards nomination, not nomination, but when we're taking the time to say, bring everybody up and you're honoring them, I'd like to give them time to take pictures and do all the stuff, because I don't want to hurry through that. I think it's very special. And I just like for them to have a little bit more time to like soak that up. And I think sometimes we're afraid we want to keep things going. And I think that's one time we should really probably slow it down a bit. So that's just me. I would like to take a little bit more time, let them have a little bit more of that time.
That's just because you're retired now and you don't.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right.
Well, I think.
No, I agree with you.
I think everybody on this board knows that if there's, that is by far the favorite part for me, is being able to recognize our students, recognize our staff. It's hard sometimes to know all the positive things that are going on, because there are a lot of positives going on. And just being around our students is it just is a good feeling. The other mornings, Miss Akert and I were at Holston Elementary as students were coming in, and we both stood there and held doors, and it was just, it starts your day off right when you see those smiling faces come in, and you know what you're doing and who it's benefiting. So that's all I have.
Again, welcome, Matt.
If,
You didn't, once you got in.
and I will add, after the board meeting tonight, if anyone still wants to go through and see any parts of the building, we're happy, to make that happen for you this evening as well.
And if you've not been to a basketball game here in feel the school spirit. He's listening. Makes me feel young again, Mark.
All right, Ms. Sacred, are you ready?
I think we are ready.
We're gonna adjourn.